Hi, this is a remake of a video I released last year. Why remake it? Why not? The original and my follow-up video of playing Sister Location are now unlisted videos, but links to them will remain available in the description of this one. Hope you enjoy. Hi, I'm K2. Despite being a fan of Five Nights at Freddy's since I was a kid, I've never actually played them myself, and I decided last year to play through them all for the first time, just because I thought it would be fun. And then I solved the original lore. For context, I stopped keeping up with the lore after... I want to say I remember Scott editing his website during a MapPat livestream, but outside of the film, falling asleep to Markiplier Let's Plays, and Dual Processors Theory released last year that pulled me back into the labyrinthian hellscape of this franchise.
I see you're trapped in my gay and stupid maze again.
I haven't actively kept up with the story for years, but something I vaguely remembered before doing this is that Scott said the story was solvable with FNaF 4. No one was able to confidently put things together until another 8 games down the line apparently. I was curious to know what had been missed, so I decided to see if I could solve the original lore of Five Nights at Freddy's. So where better to start than Five Nights at Freddy's 1. With one game under my belt, I've realised that across the original trilogy, we are told 2 stories each game. The story of the Night Guard, and the story of the business. As they present themselves in Five Nights at Freddy's 1, both of them are incredibly compelling narratives. Set in 19-something or other, we play as a guy called Mike Schmidt, and as we follow training tapes left for us over the phone, we learn that Freddy Fazbear's Pizza has a history of shady dealings and treatment of employees.
Yeah, they don't tell you these things when you sign up.
We learn about something called the Bite of 87.
It's amazing that the human body can live without the frontal lobe.
And unfortunately, the unnamed man, who is almost universally referred to as Phone Guy, meets his untimely demise in the recording we received night 4.
I may not be around to send you a message tomorrow. I'm kind of glad that I recorded my messages for you when I did. I always wondered what was in all those empty heads back there. You know. Oh no.
As the current night guard, Mike Schmidt, we finish our week at the business, and then if the custom night is canon, we get fired for messing with animatronics. Story of the business is then presented via newspaper clippings hidden in the east hallway. We are told of a man luring 2 children into the back room during the late hours of operation at a Freddy Fazbear's Pizza on June 26th of an unnamed year, which the police then link with a further 3 children who have also gone missing in the past. We know that the business gets threatened with shut down, again, by the health department and police after Visitor is discovered on the mascots themselves, and finally, we get told that the pizzeria is closing by year's end, which if we look at the general state of the pizzeria, and the time in our paycheck, we are working here in the business's final months. With those 2 put together, we have our current timeline. 5 children have gone missing at some point in time, with the police linking them all together due to the same circumstances of their disappearance, and the suspect has been arrested. Phone Guy unfortunately dies in his final week at the company, and Mike Schmidt is hired at some point after him. Whatever year this game takes place isn't given to us, but we know that the business is closing down at the end of the year, and due to Phone Guy telling us about the Bite of 87, this game takes place after. I don't think time travel exists in this franchise. That is our series of events for now. It's an incredibly compelling narrative that I adore. However, there are 2 things I would like to bring up here. Firstly, this newspaper clipping, specifically isolating the story of the 2 children on June 26, tells us that the missing children incident didn't happen in one night. In fact, the only thing that is ever referred to as an incident is the 2 children going missing together. The 3 other children who have gone missing, which this newspaper seems to indicate was in a similar fashion, or could at least be linked to the same perpetrator, but over the years, the fanbase has diluted the missing children incident to being all 5 children at once. But this game only references the 2 at once on June 26, and the 3 other children's disappearances are linked. Therefore, when I refer to the missing children's incident going through this video, I'm referring to its conclusion on June 26th. Also, we don't know if the missing children incident occurs at the Five Nights at Freddy's 1 location. The phrasing of this newspaper would indicate that it happened here, but I'm going to argue that only 2 of these newspapers apply to the Five Nights at Freddy's 1 location, for reasons I'll explain later. With that being said, and this game's story under our belts, it's time for us to move on to Five Nights at Freddy's 2. In Five Nights at Freddy's 2, we get told a lot. Some of it I can't properly explain until later, but as things stand, we play as Jeremy Fitzgerald, a new hire to the company, who is the second guard to work the night shift, the former one now being the daytime security guard.
You're only the second guard to work at that location. The first guy finished his week but complained about conditions. We switched him over to the day shift.
We get told of a previous location with hints towards something having happened there.
Now, I want you to forget anything you may have heard about the old locations. Some people still have a somewhat negative impression of the company. That old restaurant was kind of left to rot for quite a while.
And in the later night, this location gets named.
We're going to try to contact the original restaurant owner. I think the name of the place was Fredbear's Family Diner or something like that.
As the week progresses, something starts happening at the location during the day shifts that the police start investigating.
I wanted to ease your mind about any rumors you might have heard lately, that whatever is going on out there, however tragic it may be, has nothing to do with our establishment. Our guard during the day has reported nothing unusual, and he's on watch from opening till close. Just to update you, there's been somewhat of an investigation going on. We may end up having to close for a few days, I don't know. That it's really just a precaution. Fazbear Entertainment denies any wrongdoing. From what I understand, the building is on lockdown. No one is allowed in or out, especially concerning any previous employees. What on earth are you doing there? Didn't you get the memo? The place is closed down, at least for a while. Someone used one of the suits. We had a spare in the back, a yellow one. Now none of them are acting right.
But we continue working through our week and eventually get moved to the day shift ourselves for the location's final event.
We have one more event scheduled for tomorrow, a birthday. You'll be on day shift.
Then the week ends and Jeremy Fitzgerald moves on. Again, if the custom night is canon, the new security guard, Fritz Smith, only lasts a single day, getting fired for tampering with the animatronics. Now, for the story of the business, we get told that the location we're working at is the new and improved Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. The rest of the story of the business is told to us through secret minigames. 4 to be precise: Save Them, Foxy Go Go Go, Give Gifts, Give Life, and Bring Cake to the Children. The Save Them minigame shows us that children are dying at the Five Nights at Freddy's 2 location, with the map layout and the animatronics present matching. In this minigame, we control Freddy, and wandering around, we can find bodies of children as well as Purple Guy. This minigame is not analogous to an actual thing that has happened, unlike some other minigames of Five Nights at Freddy's 2. It is a representation to tell us that children are dying here at this location. Foxy Go Go Go, again, tells us this, as the 5 children being dead only occurs when Purple Guy turns up. This minigame exists to tell us that this is the man responsible for these 5 dead children, and Save Them tells us that it's happening here. However, this again is not analogous to a real situation that has happened, as the 5 kids that die at the hands of Purple Guy are analogous to the 5 haunted animatronics present at the Five Nights at Freddy's 1 location. Freddy, Foxy, Chica, Bonnie, and the puppet. In between nights, we receive mini cutscenes at the FNaF 1 location, and in these, we see 2 animatronics that we don't see in the first game. Golden Freddy, whose lighting doesn't match, showing that this depiction in particular is an apparition, similar to how they can appear in-game, and the puppet, whose lighting does match, showing that the puppet is actually there. And I think these cutscenes are a first-person depiction of our third minigame, Give Gifts, Give Life. In Give Gifts, Give Life, we are told how the kids are possessing the animatronics. The puppet is bringing them back to life. The reanimated carcasses we're told about in the FNaF 1 newspaper clipping. And this is also why I believe this newspaper clipping applies to the FNaF 1 location in particular, because the business being threatened with shutdown again implies they've been shut down before, which happens at the end of this game. But if the kids died at the Five Nights at Freddy's 2 location, how are they haunting the FNaF 1 animatronics? I hear you ask. The final newspaper clipping also tells us that the old animatronics will be used for the next location, and that's where their bodies were hidden. Returning to the minigame itself, we are told for the first time that there were actually 6 dead kids by the time of the FNaF 1 location opening, with the 6th one being related to Golden Freddy. Golden Freddy appears as an apparition in both the first-person cutscenes and the minigame itself, and they are separated this way because they are the only one of the 6 dead kids who did not die at the hands of Purple Guy. So, how did the Golden Freddy child die?
They used to be allowed to walk around during the day, too. But then there was the bite of 87.
I'll get back to that. If the first-person cutscenes and Give Gifts, Give Life are the same, the puppet's victim has to have already died, which we get shown in Give Cake to the Children. This child is analogous to the puppet, and their death is shown separately to the others because they died first at Fredbear's, which is why the company needed to rebrand and why there are rumours about the old location. This death was still able to be linked to Purple Guy, as he was the perpetrator, but again, please remember that the missing children's incident only refers to the last 2, with a further 3 children able to be linked to him. I'm only focusing on Five Nights at Freddy's 1 through 4 in this video, but because we're told of the 2 going missing together, I believe that these 3 minigames in Pizzeria Simulator show us what happened to the other 3 children. children, 2 of them having reference to Spring Bonnie, the same way the final 2 children go missing, with 1 of them even being late at night, which is also what happens to the final 2 victims, and the 3rd minigame being a retelling of Purple Guy's first kill, to both clarify a change Scott made and to tell us about all 5 victims total. Because of this death occurring at Fredbear's, this means of the 5 missing children, the remaining 4 die at the hands of Purple Guy at the Five Nights at Freddy's 2 location. But I'm going to jump backwards a bit. Unlike FNaF 1's depiction, we know that Golden Freddy is a physical suit present in the location of FNaF 2. As the first trailers we got of FNaF 2 has kids' drawings with him in. The kids' drawings mean that this character is used amongst the cast, and we also get a depiction of it in Save Them, again showing us this character is physically here. So why is Golden Freddy here? And why is he a character among the cast? It's because it's the Fredbear Springlock suit, and this restaurant is a rebrand of Fredbear's. Again, I'll come back to that. Now, bold claim, but Five Nights at Freddy's 2 does not take place when we are told.
Meat and hot!
Scott turned this game around in 3 months, which is an insane feat considering how much he put into it, but reusing assets saves plenty of time, and the paycheck is one of these because it's such a small part. We do get told the actual time the game takes place.
Hello and welcome to your new summer job.
But then the paycheck at the end says November. It's the exact same date as FNaF 1, but that date made sense there because we know that the location is closing by the end of the year. That date is a very deliberate choice in FNaF 1 to tell us that we're working right at the end of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza as a corporation. Scott just slapped 1987 on it for production's sake, and if you want to argue real-world semantics, the 5-day work week does not end on a Thursday. And that's something else I should clarify. How do we know that the kids are going missing here? And that the kids are dying here? Well, the phone calls mainly. But then, how do we know that it's Purple Guy doing this? I'll get back to that. But for now, we should move on to Five Nights at Freddy's 3. Now, unlike the first 2, the story of the Night Guard has no effect in this game. Whoever we are doesn't matter, but what does matter is the phone calls, the end of night mini-games, and the secret mini-games. In the phone calls, we learn for the first time about the Springlock suits, and we learn that
Every location is built with 1 extra room that is not included in the digital map layouts programmed into the animatronics or security system. This room is hidden to customers, invisible to animatronics, and is always off camera.
we also learn that after an unfortunate incident at the sister location, Springlock suits are to be retired, which I'm gonna be honest, I struggled to figure out an explanation for this. This is the biggest, and if anything, only question mark in my entire final theory when I get to that point. But anyway, due to budget restrictions, which you learn about both in the following phone call and from the newspaper at the end of FNaF 2, all the secret rooms are going to be sealed.
The previously mentioned safe rooms are being sealed at most locations, including this one.
We also discovered the FNaF 1 location had a secret room through the end of night minigames, as Purple Guy, who apparently has been freed at this point, lures the animatronics to this room to dismantle them, as he knows this is where the bodies were hidden. And of course, at the end of these minigames, Purple Guy's body just does that, but this room's existence means the FNaF 1 building was owned by Freddy Fazbear's Pizza around the time the Springlock suits existed. And I've already said that I don't think the FNaF 1 location was in use until after FNaF 2 as a Freddy Fazbear's Pizza location. So why would this location have a secret room built in it if the secret rooms are already discontinued? Especially with the Springlock suit inside it. Well, the phone calls tell us that the classic suits are being retired to an appropriate location without giving a time frame, so they may not have been moved immediately.
The classic suits are being retired to an appropriate location while being looked at by our technicians.
And we get told in the later 9 that
Management has also been made aware that the Spring Bonnie animatronic has been noticeably moved.
which means at the time of these recorded phone calls, the Spring Bunny suit in particular, that may not be limited to just Spring Bunny, is still being used despite the discontinuation of the classic characters. We also get a phone call telling us that
Under no circumstance should a customer ever be taken into this room and out of the main show area.
meaning that someone has done that. And I think these two things in tandem are related to the kids going missing at the FNaF 2 location. The phone call that announces the discontinuation of the Springlock suits ends by saying,
That being said, we are free of liability. Do as you wish.
so it's entirely reasonable for a location to have ignored that. For example, the FNaF 2 location closing down could have kept using the classic characters past the order to retire them up until the final event, to then properly retire them. To explain why the FNaF 1 location has a secret room if it's not currently an establishment, I think this building was originally Fredbear's family diner, which would explain why the secret room exists, because the classic characters, Fredbear and Spring Bonnie, are both Springlock suits. And as we know from the phone calls instructing how to use the Springlock suits, a private room exists in case of emergencies regarding them. It would also explain why Freddy Fazbear's Pizza already owns the building, and how they are able to save money with their low-budget reopening after FNAF 2 by revamping an already existing location. And now for the secret minigames, I don't have that much to say about them, other than that I think that they are very beautifully crafted. That a horror franchise can have such a grim, unsettling backdrop across everything, and yet still tell a beautiful and poignant story of these tormented souls finally finding peace. It's brilliantly done, and I commend Scott for that. However, I will say that these minigames focus on animatronics present at the FNAF 2 location: Balloon Boy, Chica, Mangle, the Puppet, and Fredbear. And I think this is again to represent these kids dying at the FNAF 2 location, with the glitch minigame representing how Purple Guy is behind it all, how it crosses over into each minigame, using the same animatronic he did to cause this torment. Yet in the end, it's a kid's character. It's bringing joy to the children. And with all 6 kids together, they can finally move on and rest. And we can move on ourselves to Five Nights at Freddy's 4. Now, FNAF 4 doesn't have the same storytelling the original trilogy has, but the story it does tell, I think, is very simple and very misunderstood. Apart from the box. I know Scott said where the story went meant it didn't lead in the right direction to open the box, which, I get it, that happens. But apart from the box, I think this game is a lot simpler than people made it out to be. And I will start by saying that this game originally did not take place in 1983, and originally there was no Bite of 83, but I'll explain why in a minute. In this game, we play as the child we see in the minigames between nights, and unfortunately, at his own birthday party, he falls victim to what in canon is later referred to as the Bite of 87. Not the Bite of 83, I swear to God, making 2 bites complicated so much! Through hidden Easter eggs of an IV drip, a pill bottle, and flowers at the bedside, we are told that this child is unfortunately trapped in the nightmare as part of his recovery, scared of the animatronics that were the reason he suffered, and unfortunately passing away at the end of the game, eventually haunting the Fredbear springlock suit that killed him. I also think that the Fredbear and Friends Easter egg in the End of Night minigames exists to tell us when the other characters first came into existence. We know that the business started as Fredbear's Family Diner, with Fredbear and Spring Bonnie as the only characters, later referred to as the classic characters in FNAF 3. However, Bonnie, Freddy, Foxy, Chica, and presumably the Puppet are introduced to the lineup in 1983. Through Fredbear and Friends. Creating more mascots just gives children more characters to get attached to, which a Five Nights at Freddy's franchise in real life is a prime example of. If the business was successful enough to have become a kids' cartoon show, they'd want more than 2 characters. But in the End of Night minigames, we also see the toy animatronics from FNAF 2, with a Mangle toy present in the house, and a kid playing with a toy Chica toy, among other things. And believe it or not, I think that with the inclusion of the FNAF 2 toy animatronics in FNAF 4, along with everything else the previous games have told us, with all of this together, we can solve the original lore of the first 4 games. Five Nights at Freddy's 4 minigames tells us the fate of the crying child, and when the original cast of animatronics was expanded past Fredbear and Spring Bonnie. And the FNAF 2 phone calls back this up, telling us of an old location where the characters present came from, which had been left to rot due to the death of the child that haunts the puppet, hence the existence of rumours that the company wants people to forget. The grand reopening and rebranding to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza with the toy animatronics in FNAF 2, with the same toy animatronics being present in FNAF 4, and the FNAF 3 phone calls telling us that the business allowed people to do as they wish with the classic character suits, tells us how the classic Springlock suits and the toy animatronics would be able to exist at the same time. The Five Nights at Freddy's 1 newspaper clippings tell us of the children going missing, and the manner in which they did, with the Five Nights at Freddy's 2 minigames telling us who was responsible and where it happens. FNAF 2 also tells us the daytime security guard has been fired and isn't allowed in the building again, with FNAF 4 showing us the purple guy was the daytime security guard who was fired, and FNAF 1 telling us he was arrested. With the final event of both FNAF 2 and FNAF 4 being a birthday party, all of this added together tells us the FNAF 4 location is the FNAF 2 location. The Bite of 87 happens at both the end of FNAF 4 and FNAF 2. The Bite of 87 was maybe a springlock failure. The missing children's incident concludes at this location, and not only that, it tells us that the Bite of 87 and the conclusion of the missing children's incident happen at the same time. In Five Nights at Freddy's 3, we are told each location has a secret backroom for the Springlock suits, and Five Nights at Freddy's 1 tells us that this is where the murderer lures the kids, and that after multiple Springlock failures, the rooms are to be boarded up. So for those rooms to exist for the children to be lured into, the missing children's incident has to conclude before the Bite of 87, because these rooms no longer exist in any location afterwards due to the Springlock failures. With my current theory being that the Bite of 87 was a Springlock failure. Which, by the way, I got quite a few comments on my original video saying that the Bite of 80 whatever the hell it is cannot have been a Springlock failure, and I would just like to present to you the Springlock failure in FNaF 3 and the Bite in FNaF 4. It's the same sound effect. It was absolutely intended to be a Springlock failure. It is a Springlock failure. Also, why change it to 83? What's the point? This part of FNaF 2's Night 4 phone calls
There's been somewhat of an investigation going on.
describes this part of the FNaF 1 newspaper clipping as due to the language of police investigating and police think, they don't definitely know what's happened at this current point in time. FNaF 2's Night 6 phone call describes this FNaF 1 newspaper clipping. The language changes in both to be definitive, but this also says that the culprit was arrested. So how can he be present at the FNaF 4 location? If we line up the events in each game, FNaF 2's Night 5 phone call tells us the day shift employee was arrested, which if the birthday party takes place on FNaF 4's day 6, but FNaF 2's day 7, FNaF 2's Night 5, where the arrest took place in the day, would be FNaF 4's Night 4, and Purple Guy appears in FNaF 4's Day 2, which will be FNaF 2's Day 3. God, that was confusing. I felt like Pepe Sylvia for a moment. And all of this to point out what gets said in FNaF 2 Night 3.
Our guard during the day has reported nothing unusual, and he's on watch from opening till close.
This, combined with FNaF 4 showing us that the day guard is Purple Guy, tells us he has been lying to the company to allow him to keep killing kids. And he gets arrested on Night 5 of FNaF 2, which is also the end of our 5-day work week, meaning it's a Friday. And what day does the missing children incident conclude according to FNaF 1's original newspaper clippings? June 26. And what day was June 26, 1987? A Friday. The horse's name was Friday. I also think that there have only ever been 3 Fazbear/Fredbear locations. In FNaF 2, Phone Guy tells us there was an original diner, and FNaF 4's Fredbear and Friends from 1983 shows us what year the older models in FNaF 2 were made in, and that they also came from Fredbear's Family Diner, the vintage pizzeria given a new life. Further evidence for this is the state these animatronics are in. So Fredbear's Family Diner is location 1, and of course the FNaF 2/FNaF 4 location is location 2. At the end of FNaF 2, Phone Guy says the following.
When the place eventually opens again, I'll probably take a night shift myself.
And who is it giving Mike Schmidt instructions in FNaF 1 when they reopen?
Hello? Hello?
This proves to me that in its original run, there were only 3 locations specific to the brand of Fredbear's/Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. And with all of this, I present to you my final timeline of the original FNaF quadrilogy, with all of this being solvable before we knew a single character's name. At some point before 1983, Fredbear's was founded with the 2 characters Fredbear and Spring Bonnie. 1983, Fredbear and Friends gets created, introducing Freddy, Foxy, Chica, Bonnie, and the puppet to the cast of characters. Sometime after this, the first child dies of Fredbear's, and neither the culprit nor the body was found. The restaurant shuts down as a result of this, left to rot, and the first child goes on to haunt the puppet. Now this isn't relevant to the original quadrilogy, but I believe between 1983 and 1987 is when a sister location is made, separated from the branding of Fredbear's. Then, in June of 1987, a vintage pizzeria is given new life, with a rebranding of Fredbear's, but keeping the classic characters. Purple Guy is the first night guard at the location, but he gets moved to the day shift after his first week, and Jeremy Fitzgerald gets hired, starting his new summer job at the new and improved Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. But in Jeremy's first week, police start investigating kids going missing, but the day shift, which remember is Purple Guy, says that nothing is happening. The Springlock malfunction occurs at the previously mentioned sister location that results in a general order to retire the classic characters, but also says the employees are allowed to do as they wish with the suits because the company is free from liability if anything goes wrong. Purple Guy then gets arrested on June 26th for the murder of 4 kids across the week, with both his lies to the company unfolding and the initial murder of Fredbear's being tied to him, creating the 5 missing kids total. But their dead bodies aren't found as they were stuffed into the Fredbear and Friends animatronics from Fredbear's Family Diner. Jeremy Fitzgerald then gets moved to the day shift for the location's final event, with the Bite of 87 occurring at the kid's birthday party, and this location then shuts down, but not before announcing that they will reopen on a smaller budget, and the Springlock suits are moved to another location after the FNaF 2 location closes, with the secret rooms across all locations being boarded up. Then, in 19-something or other, the FNaF 1 location, being a revamped Fredbear's, opens, with Phone Guy working the night shift. The classic characters are retired completely, and Freddy, Foxy, Chica, and Bonnie are all that's left, with hints to the puppet being present somewhere. At some point, the police are called after Viscera is discovered on the animatronics, and they get threatened with shutdown again. And eventually, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza goes into administration and announces that it will shut down, the Phone Guy dying in his final week while recording messages for Mike Schmidt. Not too long after Mike's tenure at the company, Freddy Fazbear's closes for good, with the building being left to rot. At yet another unnamed year, after the closure of the business, Purple Guy, now released, breaks into the FNaF 1 location to dismantle the animatronics and dispose of the kids' bodies hidden inside them. However, the spirits come back to haunt him, trapping him within the back room, and he dies within the spring bodysuit he climbs into to defend himself. Spirits at this point have been freed, but have not been laid to rest just yet, and no one discovers Purple Guy's corpse because the FNaF 1 location had been abandoned for years at this point. Now again, not relevant to the quadrilogy, I believe it's between this minigame and Fazbear's Fright's opening that the former sister location is turned into Circus Baby's rental. Anyway, back to the quadrilogy. Now in 20-something or other, Fazbear's Frights opens, the spring trap being discovered within a week or so of its opening. But then, it burns down, and we are told through the Happiest Day minigame that the children are finally able to have the birthday party they wanted to begin with, and the spirits are finally laid to rest. And with all of that, I can pretty confidently say I have solved the originally intended story for this franchise. I'm aware now that the franchise's story goes in an interesting direction after the quadrilogy. I became fascinated with Help Wanted. Hey man, get the fuck away from me, I swear to God. Because that game, in my eyes, is where the franchise's timeline kind of resets. The opening of that game, retconning the original Click Team games into existing in-universe, but then they are also still based on the truth, but not entirely one-to-one with the new story. I don't know how that works. I'm kind of excited to see how it works. The second half of FNaF Help Wanted sucked, but I'm still gonna play through the rest of the series and make videos on my thoughts as I'm going through. If any of you have rewatched this from my initial upload last year, thank you all so much. That really does mean a lot. I'm so excited to read your comments because people's thoughts on the original video were amazing and really helped me figure out some things that I didn't know beforehand. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next video.